Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we divide and move perennials. So let's go. It is early September. The weather has cooled down here in New Hampshire, Zone 5B. In fact, our daytime temperatures are around 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Nighttime temperatures are dipping down to the low 40-degree Fahrenheit range. It's a perfect time for me to be digging up, moving, dividing perennials in my yard. I want to be doing that right now because I want to give the plants plenty of time for their roots to establish well before a frost hits. Just for a little perspective, we're on the south side of my house. This is my side walkway. You can see I have a side porch there. This flower bed that we're going to be working on is what I call my side walkway flower bed. There are a lot of different plants in here, so I figured I'd walk you around it a little bit. And I'm not going to go over every plant in here, but I'm going to go over the plan for today, or at least the initial plan, because things can always change. Towards the front of the flower bed, you'll see a nice green ground cover. It's a ground cover right now, but I have to tell you, during the early spring months, it is bursting with color. It's called Dianthus, and I have a couple of different colors of Dianthus in this bed. And one thing you'll notice is that the Dianthus goes around the whole entire outside perimeter of this flower bed. It's even on this side here. What I noticed this past season was the Dianthus on this side of the flower bed, just some parts of it started to die off. So they didn't look as pretty as they had looked in previous years because there were small little gaps and spots that needed to be filled out. I mentioned I had a couple of colors of the Dianthus. You can see one of them, it's starting to just put out a second flush of blooms. It'll never put out the same amount of blooms as it does early in the spring, but nevertheless, it's nice to have little pops of color. So we have a white colored Dianthus here, which I really like because it's a very vibrant white. And the white Dianthus is towards the front of the flower bed. And then one row behind that Dianthus is this color here. It's a hot pink magenta color Dianthus. So pretty. A lot of people think that Dianthus is an annual. What I tell everyone is give it a try. Put it in your landscape. You might be surprised. It might come back for you. Oftentimes Dianthus does return. Now, this is not Sweet William. This is different than Sweet William. So just keep that in mind. I have another kind of Dianthus towards the back here, and that's called Cheddar Pinks. Before we begin this project, I'm going to pop up on the screen what the Dianthus looked like when it was in full bloom. You may be wondering, how many plants did I buy to do this project? I only bought one white and one hot pink and one cheddar pink. And then over time, I've just divided and moved that plant all around. In the area that looks pretty good, I want you to notice, I usually try to keep a small little gap between plants. Over time, the gaps do fill in, but it's my preference to have small gaps in between the plants. They don't need to be symmetrical, but I just like the look of it. And on this side here, where things are sparse and we need to fill it in, you'll notice that the gaps are definitely bigger. In fact, like we could add a plant right there. So in terms of the white colored Dianthus, we're not missing a lot. We're missing, I would say, 2, maybe 3. I could add one right there if I wanted to, but we're definitely missing at least one. And then right behind the white, where the pink would be, for whatever reason, we lost a number of them. So for the purpose of today's video, I'm showing you and explaining to you things that I'll be doing in this flower bed, but we won't be doing all of it together. It's going to take me a long time to do this. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to dig up one white one and one pink one, and I'm going to show you my process for dividing them as well. Dianthus creates a mat like this. And you want to pick it up and look around the mat to look for areas where you can try to dig. Could you dig up this whole plant? You could, but I'm going to attempt to not do that because I don't want to disturb the roots of the main plant we're taking from. So this plant starts here and it kind of goes this way. I would like to be able to have a small little gap right here to separate this white color from the pink colors back here. I'm just going to use a small hand trowel or hand shovel. I'm going to lift up, and I'm just trying to separate these two plants so I can see where this one ends, where this one starts. Same with on this side. Dianthus can be divided in the spring or the fall, but since it blooms in the spring, I prefer to divide it in the fall time. So I'm just trying to get under it and dig. And like I said, if I have to, I can always take out the whole main plant and divide it. And now I'm just trying to pull a piece off. And I want you to notice we have some green leaves on the top, and then at the base, we also have a very good root system. I like the size of this plant. I think it's going to be perfect, and Dianthus fills out very quickly. It gets bigger very quickly over time. We just need a small piece like this to start with. And with the rest of this plant, what I can do is just tuck the roots back in. Could I have dug up this whole thing and pulled it apart? I definitely could have done that. I also could have used something like a hand pruning saw if I was to dig up the whole plant, and I could cut right between where the roots are. There are a lot of different ways to do this. Another way you could do it is you could use a large shovel and cut right down. With a plant like this though, I prefer not to do that. I like to be a little more gentle with it. So now I can go ahead, fluff it up, and it doesn't even look like we took a piece from it. We're going to put our division right here to fill the gap between these two plants. So I just have a little bit of mulch here. I'm going to move it aside. We're going to dig our hole. I do have drip irrigation in this bed, so the soil is nice and wet. But it's always a good idea to add water in the planting hole. And if you don't add it in the planting hole, you can also add it after you plant your division. I have some Espoma Biotone Starter Fertilizer. I'm going to sprinkle it in the hole. I'm not measuring it. It's organic, so it's not going to burn the leaves or the roots of the plant. And the reason I added the fertilizer is it's getting late in the season. I want the roots to establish themselves as quick as possible. We are going to take the roots, we're going to tuck them into the hole that we just made. We just want to make sure that we are keeping the crown or the base of the plant at soil level, and then we can backfill. Since the soil is wet, I'm not adding any water in the planting hole, but again, you could do that if you want to. And I'm just backfilling and replacing the mulch. I can also just fluff up this plant right here. And we've just filled in this gap. It will eventually fill in very nicely here. Give it a nice drink of water. And you want to do this daily, especially if you don't have it set up on drip irrigation. What I'm going to do is turn off the camera. I'm going to fill in these gaps. I might as well. I have a couple of gaps to fill in. It's just a perfect time of year, and it gives me something to look forward to for next year. And I think I'm actually going to add one more right here as well. In terms of the rest of the bed, I think it's fine. I don't think I need to fill in any more gaps. It's just this one side of the bed. Now that we've filled in the gaps where the white Dianthus was missing, I want to fill in the gaps for the pink. That one definitely died back a lot this year. We have a lot to fill in right here. And if we just keep following it down, you'll see there are more areas. I'm not sure what happened, to be honest with you, but it really doesn't matter because we have lots of plants to choose from that we can take pieces and add them over here. One thing that I did notice when I was planting the white Dianthus was even though we do have drip irrigation in this bed, that area did seem a little bit too dry for my liking. I watered the plants really well that I planted, but I may have to add an extra line of drip irrigation in that particular part of my bed. That could be the problem, but also what could just be the problem is over time, it just happens. Sometimes plants die off. As long as you keep a good amount of inventory in your landscape in other areas that you can shop, then it's not a problem. It just happens over time. And I'm happy to be thinning out these plants a little bit because eventually they do just fall into the next plant. I like the look of having small little gaps in between the plants. I'm pretty sure this whole area right here is the white. And then this area right here should be the pink because I can see we had one plant die off here. So we're going to go ahead and plant the next plant here. And as I'm digging, again, I am noticing that the soil is not as wet as it should be. So what I'd like to do is just come in with that drip irrigation line, probably somewhere in between the first row and second row of Dianthus. The irrigation that was put in this bed was put in many years ago. It was put in when we had irrigation installed in our lawn. And back then, which was probably 10 years ago, we didn't know what plants would be placed in this bed. There weren't that many plants. So the irrigation was just kind of placed all around. It wasn't necessarily placed around plants because these plants were not here 10 years ago. Some of you have asked me before, shouldn't I be putting water in the hole when I put the plant there? Again, as long as you're giving it water, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and put the water in the hole now, but there are times, sometimes I put the water in the hole as I'm planting the plant. And it's better to give a nice deep drink of water. I'll continue digging, dividing, and moving the pink Dianthus in this area. When it comes to these dead pieces, you can just pull them out and we can replace them in this area. For this year, I'm just looking to fill in the gaps. I'm not necessarily looking for perfection, although honestly, are we ever looking for perfection when we talk about our gardens? We're just working towards some sort of an end goal, I feel. So the end goal in this area is to fill in the gaps of the white Dianthus and then the pink Dianthus. The main issues that I see happened in terms of the die-off was, number one, the irrigation. We don't have any irrigation in this area here. I noticed as I was working down along the way, there was an irrigation line that came out here. So we'll just have to take a look at it, probably either later this season or in the spring, and just add a little bit of water in here. Worst case, if we don't, I could always use the hose and just water this area during drought. The other issue that I thought of was when it comes to the cheddar pink, it just gets bigger and bigger. It's a beautiful Dianthus, but it just, like many of our other perennials, it mats and gets larger. So it was smothering some of the Dianthus over here. I had to push it back a little bit. So on a different day, I'm not going to worry about it today. I really need to come in here and just cut some of it back because there are no roots right here, for example. The roots are in the center. So I could just come in and just clip some of it back so that it's not smothering the Dianthus. So if we step back and we look at this area, you can see that the gaps have been filled and Dianthus does grow quickly as long as it gets what it needs. Water and space. Two things that it was lacking in that area anyway. I pulled a lot of the pink Dianthus from these areas here. And again, I had to move back the cheddar pink just to get access in there. There was one big clump of the pink that I actually had to dig up of the Dianthus and divide it that way. But you really can't tell that I even touched much of this area. So we got that job done, and what I'll probably do is in the spring, if I notice there are any sections that are missing, I can always come in and just divide some plants during the early spring months. But I'm very happy that we just filled in some major gaps that were missing. The next thing that I want us to tackle is in here. This flower bed has been work in progress for the last few weeks. We have a bunch of Echinacea or coneflower They're seedlings that just dropped over the last few years. I love Echinacea. I don't love it around this area here. One of my goals for this flower bed is I really prefer, or I would love to have, the taller plants towards the back there. I'd love to have shorter plants towards the front. When you go up this little pathway area here, the stepping stones, there's a bird bath there that's hidden. And my goal is to clean up this area. It's become a little wild, a little overgrown. I don't love having all these coneflower here. They just flop over and they shouldn't be in this space. So we're going to go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to start with cutting back the coneflower. I have coneflower in other areas of my yard, so I have plenty for the birds. After we cut back the coneflower, we're going to dig it up, we're going to divide them, and then we're going to pot them up. I love coneflower. I think it's very pretty. But it definitely just flops in this area. I've had it here for a number of years, and I definitely want to cut back the blooms now. I don't want these to go to seed. If I let them go to seed, I'm just going to end up with more of these plants everywhere. And well, you know me, I can't throw away a plant. Each plant deserves to live. So the first thing was cutting back the blooms. Now we can easily dig these up. We might as well enjoy the coneflower blooms in this arrangement that we put together recently. The blooms have started to fade, but that's okay. I think they still look pretty, and we might as well enjoy them. In case you're wondering about this beautiful arrangement, because we didn't put that one together, the veterinary clinic where my cat passed away recently, they sent flowers for our family. They're just so beautiful. So I wanted to add them on the table here. I thought they would look nice next to the arrangement that we put together. I could probably add more black-eyed Susans to this arrangement, but honestly, I'm just trying to enjoy the flowers in my yard. I'm not worried about having things looking perfect, because it's just a matter of having something to look at and enjoy every time I leave my house or enter my house. And I didn't want these coneflowers to go to waste, even if they're just starting to go by. There, now we have two very pretty arrangements on the side porch. I love it. I actually have an area on the north side of my house that's full sun. It used to be full shade, it's now full sun. I would love to add this plant, the Echinacea, in that area, but I'm not going to do it today. I find when it comes to projects in my yard, it's easier for me to just tackle one section or one area of my yard at a time. The minute I try to take plants and just move them around from one spot to another in one day, the project can become overwhelming. It's easier for me to just focus on what I'm doing today, which is we did the Dianthus and now we're tackling the coneflower. Fortunately, they don't have a very deep root to them. And if the root breaks, it's okay. As long as you get a good amount of the root, you should be fine. And it's basically dividing itself as I dig it up. Each section is a very nice section of plants here. It was important for me to tackle this now, because if I wait until the spring, I have other projects I'm working on in the spring. You wouldn't know it, but right where we're working in this area here, there are a whole bunch of daffodils that come up during the springtime. Actually, you would know it because we just dug one up. So in the spring, you don't even notice the leaves of the Echinacea that were in here. But this time of year, it looks very overgrown, and I don't like that look in this bed. Sometimes you have to almost empty out a bed or a section of a bed to really think about what you want to do with it. Or sometimes you have plants that just have gone to seed and they've taken over an area. Maybe you have plants that are taller and they really shouldn't be where they should be. They should be more towards the back of a bed. Or plants that are too short and you can't even see them now. It's a perfect time of year to be thinking about that and moving your plants around. One area in this bed that I think that the coneflower would look pretty is very close to where I have the tall miscanthus as well as the Joe Pye weed. It's what I call the back border or back side of this flower bed. And I think it would just add nice height over there as well as color. I like to also just pot up plants and overwinter them and think a little bit about the plants and then get them out in my landscape. One thing I could do is wait until next spring and then put the coneflower in the areas where I want them to go. Or I can do that job in a few weeks. But for today, I don't want to just randomly plunk them somewhere else where I'm going to have to move them at a later date. But you can do that. If you know of an area where you want to move a plant that you're digging up, then you can definitely dig it up, divide it, and move it. This digging project can go on and on. I have more of these Echinacea over here as well as over here. But we have dug up enough. Let's go ahead and start potting some up. We dug up this one section, and you could definitely take this and plant this out in your landscape. Just make sure that the roots are beneath soil level, as well as, see this red part here? You want to make sure that that's beneath soil level. You also want to make sure that the leaves are above soil level. So if you were to plant it, it would be something like this. Everything below my hand here would be under soil. Everything would over here would be above soil level. Or you could take your plant and you could just pull it apart to divide it. Very simply like that. But it's not always that simple. Sometimes you have to see if you can tug it or pull it apart. But in this case, you also are looking to see if each section has roots. Even though this section is technically 2 plants here, I'm not going to pull it apart. This second section right over here doesn't have very many roots to it, and it's the end of the season. So it's going to take a long time for this one to create roots. I'm just going to call this one plant and pot it up just like that. I want to use a well-draining soil. This is used potting mix mixed with some compost and topsoil that I had. I like to pot up a lot of my plants when I don't know where I want to put them in my landscape. And then I overwinter them actually. I will put them down in my backyard plant nursery, which is right here where I live. It's a place up my driveway, and I like to sell plants to other people, but I also like to shop my own plant nursery when I need plants for different flower beds. Anyone can make a place if they have a small little place in their yard for overwintering plants. It can be in a raised bed that you're not using. It can also be a small little space in your yard. I recommend a space like that for everyone actually, if you can do it, because you might not know when you buy a plant on clearance or you get a division from a friend or a family member where you want to put that plant. So rather than just plunking it somewhere randomly in your landscape where you're later on going to have to move it, why not put it in this plant nursery area, this little temporary holding area, as you think about the plant and where you want to put it. I'm going to give both of these a drink of water. They'll end up staying in a shady area for a few days, and then they'll make it down to my plant nursery. We dug up all of these as well, so I always try first to pull them apart and see if, just by tugging, if the plants fall apart. With this one here, it definitely has a much larger root to it. There are a few different ways you could tackle this. You could use something like a hand pruning saw. You could come in here and you could cut as long as each section has top growth as well as roots. You could also use something like these small hand pruners and come in and just cut. So I'm going to come in right here. This one doesn't have many roots, but at least it has some, so that's one division. And then here's our next division. I'm just checking all the other ones over to see if we can divide these. These all look good. I don't have to divide them down so small if I wanted to. I could leave them much larger, but honestly, it's easier for me to pot them up if they're smaller divisions. Again, this one doesn't have many roots, but it should be fine. And with one like this, because I want it to fit nicely into this small type of container, I could either bend the root or I could come in and just cut some of the root because it has plenty of other roots here. This one here, you can see it had a large root that got cut off, and that's totally okay. I'm going to see if we can try to pull this apart. Here's a nice little division. I'm just taking off all of the small individual plants off of this larger one. Again, you may decide you want to have a much nicer, bigger plant. You don't have to divide it down this much. And this one I'm just going to leave as is. I've already shown you my process for what I do in terms of potting these up. I'll be potting the rest of these up and also giving them a good drink of water and putting them in shade for a few days. We ended up with 21 plants and I got them all potted up. Another thing that I could do, and I probably will do, is come in and just cut off some of the bigger leaves. At this point, I want the plants to put their energy into creating robust, sturdy, nice roots for the winter months. I don't want the plants to be trying to support all the top growth, all the leaves. However, the plants do need some leaves up there in order to photosynthesize and feed the roots. So if you're doing the same thing as I am with not just this type of plant, which is the coneflower, if you're doing this with any other perennial in your yard and it has a lot of leaves on the top, feel free to cut some of the leaves off. You just want to keep some leaves there, so I would recommend the center leaves, the smallest leaves. Leave enough there and then cut off some of the larger leaves. So for example, this plant right here, it has 4 leaves. They're all pretty large. I want to leave some leaves on there. The hope is that it pushes out new growth from the base. But nevertheless, I could always go in and just cut off, let's say 2 of the leaves, and I could leave 2 on there. As long as I leave a few on there, the plant is fine. What I'll end up doing is going through the rest of the plants and doing the same thing. If there are 4 leaves, maybe I'll cut 2 back. Or if there's 6 leaves, I'll cut 3 of them back. But in some cases, there might only be 2 leaves. I'm not going to cut any back. So let's step back one more time. We have the tall ornamental grass there that's between the 2 windows. And then we have Joe Pye weed on this side, and we also have it tucked in on the other side. I'm very happy with that. I love how we have the height between the 2 windows. What I think I'll end up doing is I'm going to put some coneflower right here as well as right here. I think those 2 would add some nice color and nice height between those plantings. I don't want to do it today, and the reason is I'm still working on this part of my flower bed. I don't want to rush it. And I'm showing you this because you might be in the same boat as me and you're trying to move your plants around. For example, right here I have a beautiful globe thistle or echinops. We had removed one on the other side recently. I still need to come in and remove this. I also have a number of plants in here that need to be removed. Then I'll be working on some other things in this area. Once I've worked on those plants that are in this area, I can then focus on planting some coneflower on this side as well as the other side. But changes like that happen over time. I'm glad I'm filming this and talking about it with you because then I can always refer back to that and think about the changes I want to make. But really what I would love to see happen with this particular flower bed is just have nice low growing things along the frontier. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but we have started it today. I will continue to come in and remove more of the coneflower that we have here, and I will also continue to remove more of the coneflower that's tucked in over here. I'll just pot it up and I'll have it ready to go for future projects. I'll also bring you along as I continue working in this flower bed. I look forward to bringing you along with the process because I think it's good for you to see how we change this bed over time and how beautiful it's going to look come next year, spring through fall. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that it gave you some ideas of things you can do in your garden. It's a great time of year to be dividing and moving plants around. I look forward to this time of year. This is the time of year when I start dreaming about my future gardens and what they're going to look like. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them down below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.